One of the things that we did at the Y is we started a program with Stanford dealing with people with cancer recovery issues. We didn't take people with cancer. We were taking people with having gone through all the horrible stuff you have to go through to deal with cancer, namely chemotherapy, there's a number of other things you have to do, surgery, of course, and radiation. Those are the three big things to deal with. Well, the Stanford people discovered that if people exercised in a structured way on a regular basis over a measured period of time, 6 to 8 weeks, that they in effect accelerated their recovery significantly. That was the result of their research. So we joined with them and set up a regimen at the Y. Another staff member and I would take groups every 8 weeks, and we would do pre and post assessments. This means when they came in the door after having registered at Stanford, we would give them a series of physical tests to see what their level of activity was in those, and I'll go into those a little bit more. And then we would go through the prescribed exercise strategies that we worked out. And then at the end, we would give the same tests again and see if there's any difference. Almost universally, people accelerated their improvements and ended up actually, one of the big problems with cancer recovery is there's a mental attitude that makes you feel like you're no longer a whole human being. There's a lot of psychological issues associated with it, but doing the physical activity definitely helps overcome the mental negativity in most people, not in all people, but in most people. So I needed to bring that up because the dimension of assessment, and I realized senior fitness assessment is not a dramatic phrase at all. I can't imagine that phrase would be something, oh my God, I'm really looking forward to that. No, it's a very, it's an interesting process to go through, I have to say, as a person who takes the assessment, but it's just such a dry sounding activity. But it's important. I'm so grateful to be here, incidentally, because I feel kind of exposed to people. I don't know who you are. I see no faces. It's like talking to a blank wall. It's a way of kind of exposing myself, as it were, but it means I'm alive. It creates strange feelings when you don't have feedback from the people you're talking to. So the things that I mentioned about this cancer program, which was called Living Strong, Living Well, and I, incidentally, being myself a cancer survivor, could relate to them very intimately, probably more so than people who were teaching such things and otherwise eventually, who hadn't passed through this ordeal of fire of cancer recovery. The dimension I was mentioning is that the assessment is done in 2 parts to be useful. It actually has 2 dimensions. One is how you compare with other people, your age and gender, and how you compare with yourself sometime in the future or sometime in the past. The people at California State University, Fullerton, in their senior fitness department, they devised a test and debugged it. It was a PhD program. They really did a good job, and they devised a fitness assessment, which is what I adopted at the Northwest YMCA. Now, what kinds of things did they measure? Well, measure upper body strength, lower body strength, flexibility of your body, endurance, how well you could do something over a sustained period of time, how your balance was, standing on one foot for a length of time, for instance, and also checking height and weight. These were all recorded for each person that participated in the assessment. We kept records of that, and at the end of the 8 weeks, we did it all again, and it had 2 columns of results, and you could see the difference between them. Even with people who occasionally couldn't attend the exercise regimen that we had set up, they showed improvement as well. But those who stuck with it all the way through, did it regularly, showed marked improvement. And the assessments that we got at the end of us, not of them, but the assessments of the program were almost universally positive. So it's an experience. I think you don't have to have cancer to do this. The assessments that I did at the Y for many, many years, I guess we went through 300-400 people. We're all seniors, and they had to start at 55 years old, all the way up. I had people that were 98, with I think the oldest we had. And I did it every 6 months for a number of years so that people could take it and then do whatever they were going to do for 6 months and see whether they improved or not. Now, one thing I have to say is the older we get, the harder it is to stay fit and to stay well, as many of you probably already know. So it's an accomplishment after a 6-month period not to have improved, but not to have degraded, because the natural tendency of the body at rest is to degrade. Movement is the nourishment of stability, strength, and wellness. That's the big thing, movement of one kind or another, and we prescribe these things. So I tell people now, I have 3 classes that I teach that are for seniors that I don't, they're not associated with Y, and they're free. The goal is to feel good, because the older you get, generally speaking, it's really hard to keep up when you're afflicted with things like recurring arthritis and other things that are just annoying. So that's part of our process of growing old successfully, is to not let that stuff get to us so that it becomes a rolling snowball and turns your life into negativity. So the specific assessment moves I can describe, since I don't have graphics made for you. But to do upper body assessment, one of the things we did was to lift weights. I can kind of demonstrate some of these things. We use a bicep and hold a 5-pound weight and move it up and down like this as quickly as you can for 30 seconds. Now, let's say one day I do 20 of these with a 5-pound weight like that. You pick the arm that you think you're strongest on, and it's symptomatic of upper body strength. There are other muscles in your upper body, all right, but this movement was deemed by the people at California State University, Fullerton, to be symptomatic of the rest of your body strength in your upper body. 6 months from now, if you could do 20 and you were, say, 85, you did damn well. If you were started at 40 and then you did it when you were 40, you should have improved to 30, because you can develop muscle strength and movement much easier at 40 than you can at 80. It's really hard to develop new muscle after 65 or so. In my own case, I like to say, I was probably in the best physical shape of my life when I was about 67, 68, because when I was younger, I smoked a lot. I drank probably too much. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I drank too much. I didn't exercise particularly, but I wasn't standing around either. I was busy. I was a manager. I wore a shirt and tie, office stuff, which means you don't do a whole lot of exercising. And I, at that time, I did not work out in addition to going to the job. So the older you get, the harder it is. And if you stay even, it's an accomplishment. Now that was the upper body. The lower body was a very simple one, and you can do any of these yourself at home, is standing up in a chair and doing it as quickly as you can for 30 seconds. Some people can do 2, some people can do 10. It depends what shape you're in and how good your legs are. Other things dealt with flexibility, and this particular test was you sat in a chair, your legs were straight out. I'd have to adjust the camera to show this. And you reach down and try and touch your toe, but you keep your legs straight. That's the clue. How close you get to your toe is the measure. Like this is 2 inches. Some people can go, let's say this is your toe, and this is your hand going towards your toe. Some people can get this close. Some people can get that close. They can actually go beyond it. It depends on the flexibility associated with your hip area. You can improve if you start out this way and you do stretching exercises. You can increase the flexibility of your middle body. And that's just those muscles. There's obvious flexibility and muscles. Every muscle stretches, and every muscle can increase the distance it can stretch. And that lends stability to the rest of your body. It means you can react to imbalances quicker. And if you're caught about to fall, you can recover easier. So supple muscles are the best defense against falling. That and your sense of balance, which is in your brain, in your semicircular canal. Endurance was standing up and walking in place as many steps as you can over a 2-minute period. And some people cannot make it for 2 minutes. They have to sit down. They're starting at a low area. And this probably means they don't do a lot of walking in their lives. There are other people that set up a regimen of walking every day, which is excellent. Some people walk slowly. Walking the dog is a good start. Some people walk quickly. Some people jog. I recommend at this juncture, if you can do it, is you walk fairly steadily, and then every so often you jog a few steps. The classic example of this is called Scouts pace, Boy Scouts pace, Girl Scouts pace. And it means 25 walking steps, followed by 25 jogging steps, followed by 25 walking steps. And the goal was to do a mile in 6 minutes, a mile in 12 minutes, I guess it is, now that I think about it. Whereas otherwise, it takes you 20 minutes to go a mile. 3 miles an hour is a mile every 20 minutes. But if you do that kind of pacing, you can cut that time in half. And you can go for a long distance because you rest between exertions. So that's a good way to build endurance. Balance, of course, lots of things can affect balance. You can probably think of some. If this was interactive now, I would ask, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think it is? What do you think it is? So think and see if we miss any. One is medications, primary anti-inflammatory medications, any kind of psychedelic medication or drug, things that involve anything that affects the brain, like trying to overcome depression. These can all affect your balance because your balance is mainly up here, plus a good muscle structure and nothing painful. Arthritis is a minor issue in this case. So stretching and balance go hand in hand, as it were, because to stretch, you're improving the ability of your muscles to maintain your balance. And of course, height and weight whenever one goes to the doctors, they usually do a height and weight check. In my case, height and weight was rather significant. When we hit, or the change in height and weight was relatively significant. When you hit late 70s or so, maybe even earlier, maybe a little later, your spine shortens because between each vertebra in your spine is a disc, and this disc is keeps the bones from rubbing against each other. You have them in your knees. Practically every joint has some version of this. It looks like a very tiny toilet seat, some people have said. But what makes the thickness of that disc, of that washer between your discs, is moisture. And as we get older, we tend to dehydrate because we don't drink enough fluid. It's a hard thing to drink the classic 8 glasses of water a day. You really have to work at it. It's not something that is pleasurable for a lot of people. And you try to substitute, like I drink a lot of coffee thinking this is the same thing as drinking water. It's not quite, but it's close. So I make up for it that way. So when you dehydrate these discs, this means they lose a little bit of thickness. In my case, I used to be dead on 6 feet tall. I am now 5'10" and a quarter because of the narrowing of these discs in various joints that are part of my height. And I suspect everybody goes through this, but it shouldn't plummet. It should be a gradual activity, and it's a signal, more fluid. Weight, in my case, since I had cancer, and I had cancer of the stomach, so I had my stomach removed, I have trouble absorbing nutrients. It's called nutritional, I forgot, I should know it, but my body does not absorb nutrients from food because my stomach doesn't have the acid anymore to digest it. So I have to take a whole bunch of pills that make believe in my intestine that my stomach is digesting food. I take enzyme pills. This means my weight dropped from 185 to 130 in the space of about a month and a half. Anybody who has any surgery in their gastrointestinal area, and they have to remove anything in that long 26-foot pathway that food travels while it's being digested and converted into waste products. If you don't take food efficiently and you don't have the right kind of mix of nutrients, it's called malabsorption. That's the word I was looking for, which means your body isn't nourished like it used to be. The first thing that goes, you'll be pleased to know, is fat. It's not a good idea to get a total gastrectomy to lose weight, I have to advise. So don't think of that as a way out. At this point, I'd like to sort of mention a yin-yang quality about some of the things that are healthy. I mentioned a lot of people worry about weight gain. They're on constant diets. In my case, I've lost so much weight, I have to worry about weight gain, which is to say, I cannot lose any more weight or I'll get sick. I have to eat stuff that has a lot of protein in it, even fat. So the prescription is I can eat pretty much anything I want to because I'm not trying to lose weight like most people do. Another yin-yang, which can go either way, is high blood pressure and low blood pressure. In my case, I have low blood pressure. I took atorvastatin or Lipitor, which a lot of people prescribed to keep your cholesterol manageable under 200, I think it used to be. Mine is so low, they don't know quite what to do. So they said, take the Lipitor to keep your, to try to keep your arteries from clogging, but don't take too much because we don't want your low cholesterol to get lower. So I'm fighting to try to keep it up. One cardiovascular surgeon that I was dealing with, he says, you need to eat more pretzels, more salt, all the stuff that everybody else is told never touch, because I need the opposite effect. So those are examples, but I say, depending on what your issue is, this determines the kind of exercise and the kind of behavior a pre and post assessment would do. Now, if I had taken a pre-assessment before my surgery and another one 6 months after my surgery, it'd be radically different. Oh my God. It would be so different, it would be invalid, because we wouldn't be dealing with the same muscle mass. Because after your body uses all the fat, it starts working on the muscle. And at the same time, it starts working on bone. So all of these depletions contribute to weight loss and contribute to thinness. It used to be thought of, if you're really thin, you're healthy. Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But for me to do an assessment now, I'm probably stable enough that I could do it, but it would be nowhere close to where I used to be when I was in shape. Comparing me when I was 65 now is like two different people. Okay, I mentioned that I'm teaching some classes now, and there are 3 of them that I work on, aside from a poetry group. The classes are senior strength and conditioning. They go for an hour, twice a week. 2 of them I do outside in a park, have about 14 to 16 people. And the middle of the week one is a Zoom class, which means we're not limited, as you all understand, by geographic proximity to where the class is taught. And COVID has taught a lot of us how to deal with remote learning of various kinds, and some of us actually like it better than the in-person stuff, not the least of which it cuts down on traffic. It cuts down on transportation time lost getting to and from wherever you're doing your thing. And the other thing is, of course, you don't have to wear shoes if you don't want to, if you're doing a Zoom class in your own home. This, in effect, is my studio for my exercise Zoom class for seniors. In these classes, I combine what I was just saying this assessment covers: flexibility, strength, relaxation, which I learned from Sachin. I tack on the end. I can't call it meditation because it's not long enough, but I use the techniques of meditation to at least get in 10 minutes of very intense relaxation by using a 2-part mantra. And it seems to work pretty well. At least I'm told that by anecdote. I don't measure heart rate at the beginning of a meditation and at the end of it. So I'd prefer, if we can, to deal with questions at this point. We're almost there anyway. There are other things I could cover, but I'm not quite sure what people are interested in. Just know that I'm a very informal kind of guy, and I have had a lot of experience. I'm no longer affiliated with Y. The classes I teach are voluntary, but I require people who are in my classes to make donations to one of 2 foundations. One is Doctors Without Borders, and the other one is Amnesty International. So if they do that, they can be in the group. So, and I don't check up on them, but I do get reports from Amnesty when somebody makes a donation, and also from doctors sometimes. So it's my way of multiplying the contribution to those 2 very valuable worldwide foundations that improve people's lives. So I hope this has been useful.